What's up, everybody? Welcome to the High Level Husband Podcast, joined once again by Dianne. We're stoked for this one, guys. Every single time we do a reel on this topic, it like goes gangbusters. Ooh. And so we were like, you know what? I don't think we've ever done a podcast on this topic right here. And this one is your kids do not come before your spouse. And every single time we do this one, the debate breaks out. But there's a reason why. Like, we absolutely love our kids. Like, we always pray before these podcasts, and we were just praying about God developing them into their own leaders and all of that and what God has for them. We spend a pretty decent amount of time with our kids.
Every single day, yeah.
I mean, every night we play a game with our kids, we go on a walk with our kids, and then we watch a program with our kids. And that's just every single night, not including what else we do with them throughout the day or the week. But with that being said, I'm letting this be known. So when my kids hear this one day, they do not come before for Dianne.
Yeah.
They know that 100%.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about that is when they get older, they will know that that's the way the order goes in marriage. Couple is before the kids. Mm-hmm. So we have an order that we teach every single one of our clients. And I promise you guys, remember this, write it down, and live it. We can't teach you how to break it fully all down right here and how to do it completely. But every single time our clients get this right and start implementing it, their lives drastically change. And here's how this goes. And it's a priority list. Most people do not have this right. It's why it's called an order. Most people have their life is out of order, like a vending machine. Yeah. Number one, it goes God first, self second, marriage third, kids fourth, business last. Now, where most men get this wrong, business is first. Mm-hmm. God finds its way in there somewhere, wherever they can fit it in. And then typically the kids come somewhere next, and then the wife in there, and their hobbies and their self comes in there. Wives, on the other hand, it's
always the kids first.
It's the kids first.
Yeah.
Always. Mm-hmm. Kids first. God finds its way in there. The husband finds his way, and the marriage finds its way somewhere.
Self is usually last.
For women, self is usually last. Men, it's usually a little bit higher in there somewhere. And it's out of order. Mm-hmm. It's not that kids are not important. It's not that business is not important. Mm-hmm. And we'll break it down for you real quick like this. When God is number one, and that's not just like, oh, I love God. That's all lip service. Mm-hmm. I could say I love Dianne, but if I don't treat her that way, give her my time, attention, serve her, do all of that, it doesn't matter if I tell her I love her. Yeah. You can tell God you love him all you want.
But if you don't spend any time with him, quality time with him,
or do what the Bible says,
yeah,
it does not matter. It does not matter. He knows that you're not giving him any attention. God, number one. And what's that look like? Being in the word, being in church, being in a Bible study, being in the word every single day, tithing, Sabbath, all this stuff that comes with it. And just loving and just doing it because that's what God says, but because you want to. Second is self, right? And self is that we're taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually so that when we show up to the marriage, we have a marriage that is me have a full cup, Dianne has a full cup, that comes together, it overflows. Well, what does God say? He gives you a cup that overflows. Mm-hmm. Go pour your cup to the top and watch what happens when it overflows. That's what God says he'll do. Well, then we bring 2 full cups and we pour it out on the kids. What's that going to happen? It's going to overflow onto the kids. And by that time, God's good, our self is good, our marriage is good, and our kids good. By the time we get to business, we're not even tripping. But most people put business first because it's their significance, and they're like, well, we need finances, we need cars, we need trips, we need bags, we need house, we need food, we need 8 different Netflix subscription type things and streaming services, we need everything.
But you only need that because it's out of order.
Right. And guess what? Money's the one thing that you won't take with you into heaven. Joy, peace, love, all of that you'll take with you. You ain't taking no money into heaven, homie. Mm-hmm. None. Not a dime. But by the time you get to business for us men, you're killing it. You're feeling so good in those other areas that you show up at work with no pressure, so you're willing to take risks. You don't need to overwork, so you're more creative. You don't need to force things. Mm-hmm. And then guess what? You're making far more money, I guarantee, in your business when you show up that way. I've seen it time and time. I've seen it play out with us. I've seen it play out with so many other people. When their order's right, their business typically 10x. When your kids are first, guess what that happens in your life? And for the women on this side, Kids are first. Well, we want to give them a life that we didn't have. And it's like, well, you guarantee the life that you didn't have
You're giving them the same life.
was not because your parents had a phenomenal marriage.
Yeah.
If your parents had a phenomenal marriage, your childhood would be great. But because your parents didn't have a phenomenal marriage, guess what? You're trying to give your kids a phenomenal life with what? Physical things, buying them things, working hard so you can give them trips and nice things that are going to go into the trash in the dump one day, things that they won't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, I had a dad who worked 80 hours a week. Guess what? Gave me none of his time or very little of his time. Guess what? He was emotionally closed off, didn't have a relationship with God, terrible marriage. But I had a four-wheeler, I had the best bikes, I had toys, I had video games. Guess what? Terrible life. Terrible life growing up. I had all the nice things. Didn't matter. So many people want to give it to their kids. And if you want to give your kids the best thing ever, give them a marriage that they can see modeled and set the standards so high that they then will go and be like, when I get married, so if you have a daughter and they see you as the man treating your wife so good, you're not arguing. You're laughing, you're playful, you're physically touching each other. And people go, well, that's gross in front of the kids. I don't care.
It's natural, and they should see that.
Right.
If they see a marriage where the husband and wife aren't touching, they aren't, loving, they're not connecting, then they see roommates. That's all they see.
And then they think that that's what a marriage is like.
Right.
And so then when their husband goes to touch them, they're going to go, oh, no, that's not good.
Right.
Because that's what is taught. They're going to think that.
Yeah, because that's what my parents showed, right? That's what they would think.
100%. So you want to show your kids how a wife should be treated. And then a wife should show the kids how a husband should be treated. Not nagged, respected, appreciated, asking for advice, listening, both ways.
Yeah.
All of that. You want to show them what that looks like. When you show them also that you put intentional time into that above the kids, they then know that what is what it is. Let me ask you this. Would you rather have a life that's just like mediocre and like a 6 out of 10 for the rest of your life? Or would you rather have these intense moments of like 10 out of 10, and then it sometimes will come back down to like a 7, but 10 out of 10, right? My point of saying that is I would rather give my kids an hour a day, but they get the best version of me and the best version of Dianne, than to give them 3 hours a day of me that's like the bland version of me or the bland version of marriage.
Yeah.
I want the moments they spend with me to be like so memorable because dad's just so fun to be around, or dad's giving me great wisdom, dad's being vulnerable, dad's loving on mom.
Dad's being a leader.
All of it. Our kids are 17 and 14 now. I've had to have very tough conversations. They go through real life problems like anybody else.
Yeah.
And you know what they got? A steady dad who had great advice. Just earlier this year, we had to have some very hard conversations with our oldest son.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember what you said after those conversations.
About how before I would have been in turmoil, but we stayed strong during those times, or
well, that you said that as well. But I was saying was like after we got done with the conversation, Dianne came up to me and she said, the way you talked to him right there was absolutely perfect, where I didn't even have to say a thing because what you said was, I couldn't have imagined anything being better than that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as I'm perfect, guys.
It's true.
I just always invite God into the conversation. And half the time I'm speaking, it's just him. I do that before this podcast. God, allow your words to be my words. And so I want my kids to see when I speak that it's meaningful. They see this joy. They see possibility in life. Most kids don't see an amazing marriage. They don't understand that God says, I can do immeasurably more than you can ask or imagine. They see a God that just wants to punish them. And that's not the truth. It's not the truth. And so that's just the intro. We're going to get into some point tips on here, guys. And so some of the things that we want to do is, so one of the things we did a reel on this yesterday is this right here. Your kids should not sleep in bed with you. Yeah. Now we have 17 and 14-year-old. They darn well better than not be. We'd probably be going to jail.
That would be weird. But at any age, because I know people too, where they have like their 7, 10-year-olds or whatever are sleeping with them still.
And then as they had more kids, they had multiple kids sleeping in the bed.
Yeah.
Or they had it, then one of them got old enough, but then they were scared to go to their own room. Yeah. So they sleep on the floor.
Yeah. I've seen that a lot too.
And now your room is, might as well just live in a tiny home because they are all just living in one room. No, your kids need to learn to be independent on their own, in their own room. And then you guys need a space to where when the kids are asleep and you're in bed, some of our best conversations are when we're in bed.
Yeah, pillow talk.
But if the kids were sleeping between us, that's not happening.
No.
Well, we would have to go somewhere else. Well, guess what? Then you have to plan the conversation. Sometimes it's because we get into bed and now we're relaxed after the end of the day. The conversation naturally happens. Mm-hmm. But if the kids are there, that will not happen. Mm-hmm. Or we get into bed and it wasn't planning on being
intimate, but we want to be. So then
it just happens.
How is it going to happen with kids in the bed?
Oh, we can go in the other room. Well, it's sometimes
inconvenient, and that's not happening naturally then necessarily.
Yeah, you're planning it.
Yeah.
It's not just going to strike up itself when you're laying there next to each other or you're having a conversation. It becomes emotionally intimate, which, guys, that's what your wife wants, is emotional intimacy. So if you're starting that in bed, and don't do it just to get sex, but if you're having that, all of a sudden it can turn to that because you're having emotional intimacy. Kids are in bed. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Sometimes we get into bed and we're like super tired before. And by the time we get into bed, we start talking, we're up for another hour and a half, even though we were just tired. Yeah. Do not have kids sleep in your bed. I don't care. Like, we did this when they were young. We had a bassinet in the room.
Right next to the bed for about 4 months, till they went to their own rooms.
But they never slept in the bed. Right. They had the bassinet next to it, like she said, for 3 to 4 months. Yeah. They went to their own room. Peace out, homie. Like, we love you. We'll be there in the middle of the night when you cry. We have a monitor. They're not going to die. You can go in there and feed them and all of that. And you'll do that. Then it taught them from the age of 3 months on. Our kids never once, ever in the middle of the night said, hey, I'm scared. I want to come sleep in your bed. Never. Not one time. 0.
They were comforted in their own rooms where they felt comfortable to go back to sleep in their own rooms.
Absolutely. So do not have them sleep in your room. You know, one thing that we see that ruins a lot of marriages is when your kids, their priority becomes ahead of the marriage. And that's because of sports. Don't get me wrong. I'm super competitive. Dianne played softball growing up. I raced BMX from about 14 on. And before that, I played Little League and basketball and all the stuff. Then it was way fewer of games. The nights of the weekend it was on Saturdays. We never played on Sundays, or I would say at least rarely. All of this stuff. What we see with so many people is they come in and their kids have so many games. Their kids they have 2, 3 kids. They're all on at least one sports team. Plus, they're on some type of other extracurricular activity. And then the parents are just running all over the place because they're at different times. And then now they're spending no time together. They work during the day. They're chasing the kids around all night.
They pass by each other somewhere in between.
They don't have dinner together. The kids come home, then they got to either finish some homework or they got to get them ready for bed. By the time they do that, everybody's exhausted. And then the one person feels left out where it's like, I would love to spend some quality time. Well, I'm just going to go to bed. And it's just like, it's just no time to connect. Show me a verse in the Bible that says your kid's supposed to be an all-star baseball player. Show me a verse in the Bible that it says you're supposed to play games on Sunday instead of do the Sabbath. Now I know the biblical Sabbath technically is Saturday and things like that. The point of it is taking one day a week of a Sabbath. Show me where it's supposed to come before God. It's not. It's 100% not.
But how many people don't go to church because they're into many sports and different things like that? And so the kids' sports teams are coming before going to church even. It happens so much.
So much. Well, then it's like, well, in church, well, we haven't been able to make it to church this week. Well, there's
Right.
plenty of stats that show even if you pray over your spouse, the divorce rate goes from 1 out of every 2. But if you're praying over your spouse out loud every single day together, it goes to 1 out of 1,153. That's a big difference. So basically non-existent.
Yeah.
That's just praying together, right? Which is huge. What happens if you're in church? Then you're actually getting a word and it's convicting your heart. And so then maybe you're not watching porn later that day, or maybe you're biting your tongue. And then maybe you meet some guys and now you're doing life with them instead of the other baseball dads who are probably drinking beers and just not serving the Lord either. Well, then you're going to flock together with other people not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to stop putting the kids before you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You have to set boundaries. Sweet. You're on a team. Well, cool. We're going to go to church on Saturday. Well, you got a game on Saturday too? Sorry. Okay. Well, we're going to go on Thursday night this week. Oh, there's no Thursday night service. Well, too bad. You're not going to one of the games, Saturday or Sunday. Too bad.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sacrifices.
Plus, you're setting an example for your kids. If you're going to all the sports things and you're missing church, what kind of example are you setting for your kids?
Absolutely.
You're setting the example that sports are more important than God, which we already went through the order. God is number one.
God's number one. God is number one. 100%. You have to make sacrifices for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they're going to grow up and be like, oh, well, so maybe it's not sports for them. Oh, well, it's something else. And then they make a thing.
Yeah.
Well, then guess what? God's lukewarm in their life. Jesus says, if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out. And when you're lukewarm, your marriage will be lukewarm. And when your marriage is lukewarm, it gets spit out 100% of the time.
And then that all just gets passed down for generations.
And then you're just like, well, it's just, well, divorce is just something that happens. No, it shouldn't happen. Your marriage should get better every single year. Yeah. Read the Bible verse where it says, you don't take new wine and put it into old wineskins. And you know why? Because when you put the new wine in there, it expands and it bursts the wineskin. You put it into new wineskins. So as you grow in your marriage, it should be expanding and getting better. That will not happen if you don't have any time to connect with each other or connect with God. You got to be very careful. Kids, you can play sports, but here's the boundaries on this, and I'm going to show you why. Why? God says you'll know my people by their fruit. Show fruit in your life. An amazing marriage. The fruits of the Spirit, joy, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, all those other ones, right? That, show it in your life that you're just so joyful. You're not stressed about anything. You're not anxious about anything. That will show your kids that, man, dad was never stressed. He was never angry. He was joyful. He was fun. Man, I want that. Look at everybody else's life. Well, everybody gets stressed, man. Everybody's anxious, man. Everybody argues, man. No, you do. And the reason you do is because you don't have fruit in your life. Why don't you have fruit? Is because you're not in church. You're not in the word. You're not putting God first. Your kids are coming for them, or your business is number one. Well, we got to be able to provide for our family. Show me in the Bible where it says if you put God number one, that he won't provide. It says the ravens don't sow or reap or store up in the barn, but yet he provides for them. Will I not provide for you just the same? There's time and time and time again. Put God first, do it his way, be obedient to what he's saying and doing, and I promise you he'll provide, because then you will find your purpose and your passion. You'll be exactly what you created to do. You'll be doing that job for a living, and when you're doing that job for a living because it's your purpose and passion, you'll be the best at it because you're seeking God and because you're growing your abilities and talents, which shows that's what fulfillment's definition actually is. You'll find satisfaction and happiness, and because of that, you'll be so joyful. Because of that, you'll be the best in the world. Because you're going to be the best in the world at that, you'll make an abundance of a living and finances, and you'll kill it. But guess what? You're not doing that because you don't know what your purpose and passion is, because you're not in the Word. You're not at church. You're at your kids' baseball games, sucking back hot dogs and Diet Dr. Peppers.
Woo!
For real, though, I'm being serious here.
It's true.
We're here to create disciples. Listen to this. Luke 14:26. If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. If I told you that, did Jesus say this? If I didn't tell you the Bible verse, I said, hey, did Jesus say this right here? If anyone comes to me and does not hate father or mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. You'd say, no, that ain't Jesus. Why would you say that? Because you're not actually knowing and having a relationship with Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's somebody in your life right now, if somebody told you about them and said, did they say this? You'd be like, oh, they would never say that. Because you know them so well, you know the things that they say. Well, apparently you don't know Jesus, because this is what he says. Wife and children. God first. You cannot make your kids idols above God.
Yeah.
Life is a life of order. You cannot take your kids and make them number one in your life. Your job as a parent is for their holiness, not their happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage is for your holiness,
Mm-hmm.
not your happiness. But when you find holiness, happiness tends to come with it. Is there going to be hard times because you're getting holy? Yep, sure will be.
But there's going to be hard times the other way also.
Guaranteed the other way.
Yeah.
And no hope or hard times, but an abundance of immeasurably more than you can ask or imagine. A lot of people think they're going to heaven and don't know Jesus. Read the Bible verse where it says people are going to come to Jesus at the end and say, Lord, Lord, I casted out demons. I prophesied in your name. I did all of this. And Jesus says, I didn't know you. Keyword, I didn't know you. Know you. Do you know Jesus? Some people say, well, man, like I don't really have, I love God. I pray to him daily, but I don't really have time to get in the word. I don't really like reading. Sweet, dude. You've never read the Bible, then you don't know Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go to church, you don't know Jesus. Because you pray from time to time in your head, yeah, who are you praying to? That's why when a lot of wives say, husbands, you should know what I'm thinking and what I want. And the guys go, I don't know what you want. Why? Because you don't know your spouse.
You don't spend time with them.
How do you know your spouse? Spending time. You're not going to spend time with your wife when business is number one. You're not going to spend time with your wife when kids are number one. You won't know each other. So wives, this is just as much for you. Yeah. I wish my husband knew what he should know what I want. I wish my husband was more attentive and servant of me. Well, are the kids number one? And if they are, that's your fault. That's your fault. Take ownership. It goes both ways. It's not just on the men to take ownership. Yes, men do it no matter what, even if your wife is dropping the ball.
Yeah.
Women, this is high-level husband and high-level wives. High-level wives take ownership and realize, you know what? I've been doing that. I've been trying to control my husband. I've been putting the kids number one. You know why you also put the kids number one? Is because your confidence and self-worth is so low. You're not getting love from your spouse. You probably didn't get it from your parents. And so you're trying to get it from the kids who are going to unconditionally love you. So you're just going to love on them so much, but you're going to set them up for failure later on.
Absolutely.
In life. And guess what? When their life sucks later on, who's to blame? You. When they're going through divorce, who's to blame? You. There's statistics that show when kids watch their parents get divorced, they're more likely to get divorced. There was an amazing, another marriage coaches online posted a video the other day, and it was like this. They did like a stitch with this. And they had this kid, and he was just playing with his toys, and he was laughing and joking and doing all these things. And then a stranger entered the room, and he went, and then the stranger raised its voice. And it was like, they did this on purpose. It wasn't like the stranger was really raising his voice intentionally. They did it for as like a thing. And you could tell the kid was like tripping out because the kid had been exposed at home. He didn't want to play with the toys. They kept putting new toys in front of him. And he was like, and he wasn't even getting him who was getting yelled at. It was somebody in the background. When you get exposed to conflict, it will ruin your kids. It's PTSD. Yeah. They're 3, they're 2. They're not going to remember it, but it will be there in their subconscious.
Yeah. They'll remember the feeling.
Guys, I'm passionate about this because I'm telling you, God has so much for you. You want an amazing marriage? Like we were just talking about this earlier today. We were about to record some content. And we were talking about, babe, you remember we used to think we had a 10 out of 10 marriage because we didn't argue and we still had sex. And we were like, today, what do you think it was really at? And we were probably like 5 or 6.
6 or something. Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10. Now I would say we have a 10 out of 10 marriage, but absolutely. I already know in 10 years from now, we're going to be like, dude.
It was like an 8 out of 10 maybe then. Yeah.
It's always room. We got to stop dropping the ball. We got to stop putting the kids first.
Yeah. It's
so important. And I'm telling you, you got to set the boundaries with them, with all these different things. Is it going to hurt? Yeah. There's going to be some sacrifices, 100%.
Yeah. And your kids might not understand it in the moment, even though you explained it to them. They won't understand it in the moment, but they'll see it later on in life. They'll look back and respect you for it.
Oh, that just sounds odd, babe. You mean like a father would tell that to a kid? You mean like John 13:7, where it says, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand?
Yeah.
You mean that's something a father would say to his son and daughter?
Yeah. Imagine that.
Oh, so we should be leading our kids just like Christ?
Mm.
Wow. That's a new revelation. If you don't influence your kids, the world will.
Yep. 1000% true.
They're getting influenced by somebody. Let it be you.
Mm-hmm.
Let it be you. Kids should never come before your spouse. God should come before your spouse. But the whole purpose of that is so you can love better. The whole purpose of being loved on by God is so you can love others better.
Mm-hmm.
So guys, I'm just encouraging you. If that's you, just know that I get passionate like this because I love you.
Yeah.
There's levels of love that you're never going to understand until you really put God first and you put these other things in other areas.
Yeah.
I'm going to read you guys something real quick, and it's going to blow your mind. It's going to be so awe-inspiring and something that you're not even able to understand, but it's going to be so worth it. Come on, where are you at? Here it is. All right, so I got it right here. I got a message from one of our clients yesterday. So we have multiple tiers of our program. All are great. Some people get a little more access to me than others. But this guy inside of our community app messaged me on Saturday, and he said, hey, man, I just found out my wife's cheating on me. He's been in the program for probably a month. And he's like, man, I found out my wife's cheating on me. And I said, and I immediately, it was just weird because I normally don't respond or check the messages throughout the day, but he had just messaged and I saw it and I responded and blah, 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 blah. And I said, hey, I sent him a video and I said, watch this from another person, a client who's in our program who had been cheated on. And now his marriage is at like insane levels. I said, watch this testimony and what he speaks on. He went back and forth with me a little bit. Well, I didn't hear from him for 3 days. He messages me yesterday and he says, I have to give you an update on how God has used you to help me. Saturday morning, I found out my wife had been cheating on me. I wanted to ruin her life. Scorched earth, ruin her personally and professionally for the rest of her life for what she did to me. I was disgusted by her and told her so. I saw her clearly for who the enemy sees her. Filthy, shameful, guilty, unworthy, and unloved. You know what's powerful? He says, I saw her clearly for who the enemy sees her as, and telling her who she is. Filthy, shameful, guilty, unworthy, and unloved. But when I left to go for a walk just to get away from her, I found a spot where I could cry uncontrollably, basically just moaning to the Lord because I didn't know what to say. It was then I felt the need I needed to reach out to you. When you responded and shared that video with me, I watched it. And as I'm listening to the story, crying through all of it, I'm thinking, I don't know how to forgive her because I hate her so much right now. Now, guys, imagine going in your wife's phone, which is a no-no, but he had some suspicions, and seeing pictures that were sent to somebody else and then finding out she's sleeping with somebody else. But I was inspired by his words to cry out to Jesus. And just as the Lord spoke to him, he said to me, haven't I forgiven you for everything completely, unconditionally? You need to do the same for her because I love her too, completely, unconditionally. And through unbearable tears, I said, I don't know how, Lord, but I choose to forgive her. And he said, now go tell her that immediately. So I went to tell my wife that. Yet something unexpected happened. Something changed in my heart. All the hatred was immediately gone. It was confusing, but it was gone and has not returned. And I told her that even in my anger and hurt and excruciating pain, you have my heart. Praise be to God. He is good. He is so good. And that's why I love you more than ever before, unexplainably, completely, unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I will love you more each day until my dying breath. Since then, my wife's heart has gone back to the Lord. She is overwhelmed by how Jesus is working through me to forgive and love her. She is night and day different, free from her own burden of extreme guilt and shame. She cannot get enough of me right now, wants me to be closer to me than I've ever known. And just today she told me, I love you. God is doing more in and through you than I've ever seen in my life.
Mm.
So thank you for all that you do, Tommy. I took immediate action, chose to forgive her, inspired by the video you sent, commanded by the Lord, and praise God because he miraculously took all the hate away. Yes, the hurt and anger is fresh, real, and unbearable, but his love is greater. The hate is gone, replaced with his love for me and for my wife.
Mm.
Imagine that, guys. Imagine that. Immediately took action, reached out, asked for guidance, went to God. I send him to something to watch. He immediately watches. Doesn't get to it. No, I'll get to it in a couple weeks. Let me go back and yell at my wife some more.
Mm-hmm.
No, immediately. Cries out to the Lord immediately. God tells him to do something and says, immediately go do this. He goes and does it because of his obedience. Guess what? The worst moment in his life is now becoming the best moment in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And when he reached out on this past Saturday and told me that he just found out his wife was cheating on him, the first question I said, did she tell you that or did you find out? He said, I found out and he told me how. And then I said, as hard as this is going to be here to hear what you say right now, bro, this is going to be the best moment in your life ever. And I promised you that, but it will be a long road.
Yeah.
Little did I know it was going to be hours. Hours. What are you willing to do? Are you willing to not go to your kids' game on Sundays? Are you willing to get them in less activities and show them leadership? They don't need to be in tap dance, ballerina, singing, and all that. Choose one. Show them what you're willing to do.
Yeah.
Is your heart loving like that? His wife had all that shame and guilt. Well, guess what? She had shame and guilt because she wasn't getting loved on by him. She had never experienced God. Why didn't she experience God? Because nobody ever showed her how God actually loves. Uncontrollably, unconditionally, through your shame and guilt, and all of that still loves you. That's how the Father loves. Well, we're called to love just like the Father. Just like the Father. And so when she experiences it from Jesus and her husband, she's now like, oh my God, this is what I've been searching for. She was just searching for it in other men because she's searching for happiness as the world is not providing it. This is a guy who has the finances to provide those worldly things. But guess what? It didn't bring any happiness. None. It brought his wife to another man.
Yeah.
When you can start loving like Jesus, is only going to happen when you have God as number one. And your kids are not number one, or your business is not number one.
Absolutely.
You can tell, guys, I'm passionate about this. Because that message last night, you could tell me right now, Tommy, would you rather have $10 million or would you rather have that guy's life changed? In a second, say that guy's life changed.
Yeah.
I've been incredibly sick for 8 days. Getting a little better, but you can probably still hear it in my voice. And just last night, I was like, God, I was so much achy and body aches and all these things. And I was just like, God, when's this going to end? And the voice that was in my heart was saying, would have you responded or been available on your phone had you not been sick?
Mm.
Because if you weren't available on your phone at that moment and been sick, maybe you're out riding your bike, maybe you're out at the gym, maybe you're doing something else, you don't answer that message. And if you don't answer that message in that moment, you don't send him that video. And then he goes back home, back to where his wife was and scorches the earth, as he says. He doesn't get it to me maybe 8 hours later. Yeah. And the damage is so well done. God said, I needed you to be sick so you were available to save a marriage. The night I started getting sick in the middle of the night, the very first thing I did, And this is new for me, guys. I don't want you to think that I'm just like, I'm always like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I gave thanks for the Lord and I started rejoicing.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? He saved a marriage because of it. He needed me sick.
Yeah.
So this guy needed his wife to cheat on him to find a life that he's going to live an amazing life. Dianne needed me to cheat on her.
Yeah.
Because if I don't cheat on Dianne, I don't turn to more drugs. If I don't turn to more drugs, I don't find Jesus. If I don't find Jesus, you know who doesn't find Jesus?
Me.
Dianne. It's always worth it, guys. Now, I'm not saying go start a fire because of that, but rejoice if you're sick, if you have cancer, if your house burns down, if your wife cheats on you, if you lose your job, rejoice.
Mm-hmm.
How can you rejoice? Because you're not attached to anything. Why? Because you just love God above everything, and that's all that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need $10 million. You don't need $100,000. You don't need 10.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need sex. You don't need kids. You don't need anything. All you need is Jesus. But when you have that and nothing else is an attachment, he'll give you everything else as well.
Yeah.
You got to get to that spot. So guys, I love you. If this podcast or this episode helps you, subscribe, rate it 5 stars, do whatever. So it really, really helps us. If you want coaching, there's a link below. Click it. We'll get after it. Love y'all. God bless you.
Bye.